Yeah, so my story is didn't grow up around church or faith or anything like that at all. But from a very early age, there was two things that I wrestled with. One was the purpose of life. I just had no purpose. I didn't know what we're here for, what we're meant to be doing. But the other big thing was I was terrified of dying. And it was a big fear of mine, knowing that one day it's like I'm going to go to sleep and never get out. And even when I spend 1,000,000 years there, I won't be one step closer from getting out. And so I wrestled with these things through my primary school years and high school years. And it wasn't until about grade 11 that a mate of mine was over and we got talking about life. And we were chatting for a little bit and I said to him, how bad is it going to be when we die? Like, because I was terrified. And he said, oh no, I believe I'm going to go to heaven. And I was like, oh, okay, a bit random. But I said, oh, okay, well, I'll just go there too. And he asked me a great question. He said, you know, if you got to the gates of heaven and God says, why should I let you in? What are you going to say? And I really didn't know, but I just said, oh, I feel like I've been pretty good. Surely he'll let me in. But we got talking a little bit more about that. And then he started talking about Jesus. And that's when I was like, oh my goodness, my mate's got to be on drugs. Like, everyone knows that's fairy tale stuff. Like, no one actually believes in that. But he spoke like it was true. And even though I didn't believe it and I knew in my mind, no, this is fairy tale stuff, there was something in me that thought it would be incredible if it was real though. If there was a God who loved me, had a plan for my life, and that death wasn't the end. And so I said, how can you possibly believe in a God that you can't see, hear, or touch? And he said, if you're genuine about it, I really believe God will reveal himself to you. And so I said, how's he going to do this? And we almost went through some prayers and he said, well, what happens if someone you know or you don't know offers you a Bible one day out of the blue? That would be a way of God revealing himself to you. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I said, oh, I might live till I'm 90. Eventually someone might do that. And that's not God, that's a coincidence. And he said, yep, fair call. Let's just make it within 2 weeks. So I was like, okay. A week later, we're going to class together. And we just happened to be walking past the chaplain's office. And I'd never met Dale, but my mate and him started to talk a little bit around bands and music. And I stood in the doorway, didn't talk to Dale, but after 15 minutes, I said, oh, we should go to class now. And Dale, we turned around, walking away, and Dale called out my name. And he threw me this book, and I've got it here today. He threw me this book. And it was a Bible, Surfer's Bible. And I looked down at this Bible, and I just knew in that moment that this was beyond a coincidence. Like, it was so powerful. And for me, what happened was I literally thought, hang on a second, maybe there's a God, maybe this could be true. I turned to my mate and I said, oh, you told him to give me this Bible, and he was like blown away as well. I remember opening it up and trying to read it, but it was so new to me. Like, I'd never had a Bible, never grew up going to church. So I just didn't understand, well, what do I do? How do I go? And I remember opening up and seeing all the little numbers in there and just going, what is this? You know, what is this about? So I actually struggled initially to go, how do I read this? And it was all new to me. But I remember, particularly in the Surfer's Bible, there were a couple of testimonies in the Bible. And even though I struggled to read the Bible, I remember being captivated by these stories. And they were testimonies of like what God's done in other people's lives. And I was just like, man, that's incredible. Again, I was really moved by that. And so I reckon that actually kick-started or helped me to sort of stay in it a bit. And I'd often read those stories. But then it just grew from there, and I started to learn a bit more about the Bible and what the numbers meant. But there was a verse in particular that was important to me, and it was something that even my mate spoke to me about when I first started to talk to him about faith. And it was at Matthew 7 where it says, ask and you'll receive, search and you'll find, knock and the door will be open to you. And the reason that was so significant for me was because that's literally what happened. Like, I didn't know about all this God stuff, but I really wanted to know, and I began searching and knocking. And God was faithful, and I encountered him, and my life was never the same again.